Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the Haydn Symphony Crusade. And we're up to the surprise, number 94, the Surprise, the Surprise Symphony. Called that because, well, we'll get to it. All I can tell you is that in German, it's called the Symphonie mit dem Paukenschlag, with the drum stroke, which is like so German because, it just misses the whole point, doesn't it? It's so lacking in humor, whereas surprise is so much zippier and sort of more true to the facts. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter at all. The symphony is delicious. And the German name does make one point that we will be pointing out, one point that we will be mentioning later on, which is that timpani are really important in this symphony in a number of ways. Haydn, you see, was a timpanist. He played the drums, and he knew how to play the drums, and he was the first great composer to write musically for the drums, and he does it throughout this symphony in quite a wonderful way. But, that's only one aspect of a piece which is surprising in so many different respects. It really is. And the symphony is written in G major, and Haydn is always at his best when he's in G major. He really is. Think of the pieces we've just talked about that are in G major. Number 88, one of his most popular. Number 92, the Oxford, one of his most popular. This one, his second to last in G major. And the next one, the one that we're going to hear in a few weeks, or later on in the series, is 100, the Military Symphony. That's also in G major and one of his most popular. So Haydn was really firing on all cylinders in G major. Don't ask me why. He just was. But one of the things about G major that you'll notice right away in this symphony, for Haydn anyway, is that it's a pastoral key. There's a lot of use of woodwinds, a sunny quality, a lilting quality, a glowing quality to the sound of the orchestra in these pieces. Haydn really did have sort of a special feeling for this particular key, and composers are like that. Composers have special keys in which they feel comfortable. We've talked about that before. Beethoven's in C minor, Mozart's in G minor. Haydn in G major is a special thing. Haydn had several special keys, actually. He had a special minor key, too. It was F minor. But that is an issue we've already talked about in connection with the Sturm und Drang symphonies. Anyway, this is just an incredible piece. It begins with a slow introduction. And that slow introduction, remember the other slow introductions for these symphonies? Usually it begins with sort of a, ta-da sort of thing, some loud, thing to get started. And then, the slow introduction proceeds apace. Well, here, Haydn begins right away with that wonderful pastoral character, oboes and bassoons. The whole symphony is scored for 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 bassoons, 2 horns, 2 trumpets, timpani, and strings. And so he begins straight off with the woodwinds, which is quite unusual for the time, in a beautiful little curve of melody. And that beautiful little curve of melody is going to return as the opening gesture for the quick part of the movement, the allegro. Haydn just speeds it up and plays it twice, basically. And that's our first musical example. I want you to just listen to that opening, da 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 ba da da, and then the opening of the whole movement, the allegro after the slow introduction, ya da 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 da. That's the same thing. So he's giving you a sort of generic version in the slow introduction, which takes shape as a rhythmic entity when the allegro gets started. And I made a little example just to show you the identity there, and then we'll come back to the introduction in a minute. There you go. Get it? Very straightforward. Then what happens in this introduction is that, the nickname for this symphony ought not to be the surprise. It ought to be Leaps and Ladders. And you're going to find out why, as we listen. But leaps and ladders is a much better description of the symphony as a whole rather than the specific surprise moment. Because ladders are, these sort of stepwise progressions that go up, by steps. Yes, it's a ladder. Here's the ladder in the slow introduction that you can. Let's just listen to the repeated notes going chun 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 chun. It just gets higher and higher and higher, and it is a ladder. And ladders are going to characterize virtually, yes, all of the thematic elements in this symphony. You're going to hear lots of ladders, but here's the very first one. And I start right away with these little fragmentary things because this is a symphony that's just incredibly unified, but not in a way that's, like, as always with Haydn, it's not in a way that's dull, because Haydn doesn't repeat themes. He repeats shapes. And so he can write whatever tune he wants as long as they take a certain shape. It's a wonderful way to unify a large work. It really is. It's really much more sophisticated than the later idea of repeating tunes wholesale in various movements, because it creates total organic cohesion, but at the same time, it allows every single movement to have its own individual themes. A lot of rich melodic material, but the shapes keep coming back. The building blocks are similar. So you've got that little curvy thing, which we're going to hear in the first movement, and then the ladder, which we're going to hear in all of the movements. Here's the whole slow introduction. Here you go. Very, very beautiful, isn't it? I mean, it just has that. It's a warm, outside in the country during the summer kind of thing, with a shadow passing over the clouds, and it's just lovely. It's just full of sort of evocative imagery. Then we get to the exposition. Now, this exposition introduces the leaps in the leaps and ladders. It's in 6/8 time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Da 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 da, like that. It's a real swingy kind of rhythm. Lots of wonderful things are in 6/8. Stars and Stripes Forever is in 6/8. Marches are in 6/8 because if they go 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, but it allows for the possibility of triple rhythm too. 1 and 2 and 3, and you can do it that way too. And so Haydn takes advantage of this wonderful lilting rhythm, and you should listen for the leaps. Da-dum, ba-bum, ba-bum, like that. Or bum, ba-bum, ba-bum, ba. You can do it either way. But it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can do it every way you can do a leap. In 6/8, Haydn does in this movement. And the leaps are going to characterize, like I said, all of the tunes of the symphony, one way or another. You're going to hear leaps and ladders, and sometimes the leaps will be a ladder They will jump up and down the ladder. You'll hear, it depends on, you can go up the ladder in even steps, or you can go up the ladder by hopping, hoppity 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 hop. I know that sounds stupid, doesn't it? But that's what Haydn does. That's what Haydn does. And I want you to pay special attention to the second subject. The second subject begins with just the leaping rhythm. It's not leaping, it's the rhythm. Cha-chum, 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 like that. It's that kind of rhythm. And then at the end, this beautiful, warm, pastoral melody comes in. Ya da 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 ya da 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 dum bum 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 da dum leap da dum ba dum ba da ya da dum, which we've been hearing leaps all through the exposition. So it's all very, very tidily unified. And here is the entire exposition of the first movement, all of the main themes. And oh gosh, it's just so beautiful. Oh, also pay attention to the rhythm. Chum, 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 as in Beethoven's Fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the antithesis of the leaping rhythm. You've got the bounce rhythm, and then you've got the one that's very stabilizing, very foursquare. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. So you have this tension, this antithesis between the two types of rhythm in the first movement. And the 1, 2, 3, 4 rhythm is really characteristic only of the first movement. The leaps will follow elsewhere. So here we go. The entire exposition. This is the Naxos recording, by the way, with Capella Istropolitana, I think, under who's conducting? Barry Wordsworth, I believe. Someone like that. It's okay. I'll figure it out eventually, and so will you. Here you go. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, isn't it just incredibly beautiful? And one of the things that's going to happen in the development section, which I'm not going to play, but I'm just going to tell you about it, is that Haydn does something radical with his timpani parts. He actually changes tuning. He uses 3-drum tuning, meaning there are 3 different notes. Timpani parts in the Baroque and classical periods were extremely limited because timpani came from the barracks. They were military instruments played on horseback, to sort of get your troops marching. And they could play only 2 notes at a time. The tonic, the main key, it's called G major, and the dominant, the key of 5th above, which in this case is D. You have G and D, and those were the only notes. So if the harmony of the piece as a whole, especially in development sections, was moving away from the tonic, which is what happens in development sections, usually the timpani could not participate unless the key happened to return for however long a time to the main keys of the movement, just for a passage or two. Haydn tells the timpanist to change his G to A. So he has timpani for the minor key section in the middle of the development of this particular symphony. He never did it again, actually. He would change timpani tunings for different movements, depending on what they were. But within a movement, it was very difficult. That was really hard in Haydn's time because, subsequently, timpani were made as orchestral instruments, so they were made to be able to change notes rapidly. Now they have pedals. You can just pedal your way up or down about a fifth. You may remember if you heard Bartók, he liked timpani glissandos. You could do that if you wanted to. Listen to the slow movement, the third movement of Bartók's music for strings, percussion, and celesta, and you'll hear a lot of that sort of playing with the pedals. Also, if you didn't have pedals, you had chains. They were called chain drums. They had chains going around the rim, and you twisted them with a key or something, and you could tighten up or loosen your skin and change the notes that way. And doing it while the music is playing requires a certain amount of ability, because you have to be able to hear where the drums are going while the music is playing in the key that you're not in yet, which means you sort of tap the drum and listen really carefully and try and triangulate the right note. It's really very, very difficult. I mean, I can tell you as an ex-terrible timpanist, it was a real pain in the ass whenever that happened. And modern works pick whatever note they want. I mean, they're all over the place. But in Haydn, that was a very, very new thing. And to ask his timpanist to change the note in the middle of the development section of the Surprise Symphony was a big ask. How well they did it or what it sounded like, God only knows. But he asked them to do it. Then they have to tune back in time to get to the recapitulation. And that was a revolution in orchestral writing. It really was. I mean, in its own quiet way. It's one that you probably won't even notice as such. You just hear that there are timpani there. But it was a very, very novel concept. But Haydn knew how to do it because, as I said, Haydn was a timpanist. And in fact, there was a point during rehearsals for these London symphonies that he actually took the sticks and explained to his timpanist how to get the best tone out of the drums, which they weren't doing in London for some reason, which is not to strike it in the middle. If you hit the thing in the middle, you don't get anything. You get this dead wooden sound. You have to strike the drum at a glancing blow midway between the middle and the edge so that you get the proper resonance. I mean, Haydn really knew what he was doing when it came to his timpani writing. And the result is extraordinary flexibility and versatility, which of course only contributes to the overall musical expression. Now, the other thing, because we're not playing the development, you'll have to listen to it yourself, is that in place, remember we talked about this, of second half repeats in first movements, instead of going to the end of the movement, going all the way back to the beginning of the development and playing it all over again, Haydn invented the coda, a serious coda, a long passage of further development and further exploration of the material that sounds as if the music has gone completely elsewhere, just when you think it's supposed to be wrapping up or coming to an ending. So it's not going to sound the same way twice. It's going to do something completely different after the recapitulation. And he does that here, and he does it in a particularly satisfying way. He figured out a new way to be able to give you more bang for your buck, more development, which means more expression, more exploration of the potential of his material, but that wonderful feeling of symmetry and arrival and satisfyingness in the conclusion. And the way he does it is to take that beautiful, lovely pastoral theme we heard at the end of the exposition. Remember? Ya da 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 dum pum pum pa, ya da 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 dum pum pum pa, ya dum ba da. Doesn't that sound like something? Beethoven's Seventh. Ya da 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 dum bum 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 ba da 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 dum ba da da da. That's another symphony that does a lot with lyrical pastoral themes and bounces. The end of the exposition, jump ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum. It does some bouncy and laddery things too, and Beethoven knew his Haydn symphonies, I mean, quite well. Anyway, I'm just pointing that out. But Haydn takes that beautiful pastoral theme and he leaves it out of the recapitulation entirely, and instead saves it for the end of the coda. So instead of having, the piece seeming to end and then going back and doing it all over again, he withholds that theme, allows a pile more of interesting development to happen, and then brings it in to wrap up the whole movement. And when it arrives, because it's such a beautiful, well-balanced, fulsome, shapely, genuine tune, it has such power, such a power of finality, a way of saying, yes, now we can end. It's all working out exactly the way it's supposed to. So I'm going to play you the entire coda from the end of the second subject and the recapitulation through to the end, and listen for when that theme comes back and just how it just has the most wonderful feeling. It's like a breath of fresh air on a spring morning. You know that you're home. You can see it, you can hear it, you can smell it, you can taste it. It's all there. So here is the coda of the first movement. Oh, God, that's beautiful, isn't it? It just blows me away every time I hear it. All right, so that's the first movement. You have to listen to the whole thing yourself, and you'll hear much more than the few things I've pointed out here. It's just unbelievably thrilling. But remember, leaps and ladders. That's what you're going to hear. Leaps and ladders. Bum, ba, bum, ba, da, 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 da. Yeah, okay, leaps and ladders. Second movement. It's a remarkable thing how many of Haydn's symphonies are nicknamed after their slow movements. It really is. It's astonishing. I mean, Haydn's slow movements were encored when these were first played. They were like the most popular parts of the symphony sometimes. I mean, the surprise is named after the slow movement. The military is named after the slow movement. The clock is named after the slow movement. He did incredible things at all speeds. The reason I say that is because so many people listen to classical music and symphonies, and they're in four big movements and four sections. They get to the slow movement, they're like, it's the boring part. Haydn's slow movements are never boring. And this is the symphony where he makes particularly sure that it's never boring, because it has the surprise. Now, when I was a kid, I had one of those classical music for little kiddies albums. And this was one of the pieces, and it was the stories attached to classical music. And they actually played this while this narrator was saying, if you listen carefully, boys and girls, you can hear the king snoring, so that Haydn can wake him up with a loud bang from the full orchestra with timpani in the middle of the softest repetition of the theme, which is what the surprise is. It's a loud bang like that. So I used to listen to it, and I thought it was just marvelous. I really did, and I still do. It's really incredible. But this movement is incredible for so many other reasons. Holy cow, it's just something really, really special. First of all, the tune. The tune is a nursery tune of the Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star variety. I mean, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is, of course, the French folk song "À vous dirai je maman," which Mozart actually used for a set of piano variations. Haydn's tune is original, but they're so similar. They're all of a type. And because the tune is so simple and the variations are so easy to follow, Haydn does some amazing things with the orchestra. A lot of the variation in this movement comes simply through changes in orchestral color. Now, let me explain what that means. Normally, in a variation movement from the classical period, the theme consists of two halves, both of which are repeated. So the form of the theme is A, A, B, B. A composer may not repeat each half exactly the same. Normally they did, but once you get going in the variations to mix things up, they might vary the repeat of the theme. And when that happens, it's called a double variation because you're getting, twice the variation bang for your buck. Haydn presents the theme as a double variation. That's how he sets up the surprise. In other words, the repeat of the theme is changed in orchestral color. It's the same notes, but the orchestration is different. First we hear dum bum 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 ba dum bum 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 bum, etc. The first half. Then he repeats it softer with plucked strings as quietly as possible. Dum bum 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 bum. Bang! Wake everybody up. And then the second half of the theme begins, which he plays very beautifully in the strings and then repeats with added coloring from the woodwinds. So he's telling us something, that the theme is not going to be a static, entity. And then there's more than one surprise, by the way. The first variation begins with another bang. And the first variation is the only variation in the movement which is standard, which is A, A, B, B, with each half identical. And it begins, like I said, twice. You hear two more bangs. And that's important. It's important because what Haydn is telling us is that first bang that woke everybody up, the surprise, was not just some sort of, gratuitous joke. It actually is part and parcel of the way the music is. That the music has a certain eruptive quality, and it does it more than once. And everybody ignores the fact that there's more than one surprise in this movement in terms of, the loud bits. But, that's very characteristic of Haydn. He doesn't do anything gratuitously. He likes to integrate his jokes into the overall flow of the movement. And it's just as surprising when we hear it again, because it's in an unexpected place. The first time we heard it, it was in between the A and B sections of the theme. The next time we hear it, it's the first note of the theme. So it's surprising there too. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out because it's interesting. So the first variation is standard, A, A, B, B, identical repetitions of each half of the theme. And the first time that's happened. After that, every single variation does something different in terms of the balance and orchestration of the theme. You can always hear the tune because it's so simple. Bum, 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 bum. You know, it couldn't be easier, but there's stuff happening on top of it or below it or around it. And no two variations are the same in terms of their structure. Haydn's constantly changing the instrumental colors and particularly giving the woodwinds beautiful things to do because, as we heard at the very opening of the symphony, the woodwinds set the tone, that pastoral tone for the entire work. And this movement particularly has some very pastoral elements. I mean, the oboe does this sort of chicken walk variation, like that. And then at the very end, the entire orchestra takes up the theme with trumpets and drums and all this stuff. In the middle of that, there is a gentler second half of the theme and beginning of the, well, repeat of the first half and beginning of the second half, which has leaps. Remember leaps and ladders. The theme is a ladder. Chung, 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 chung. Couldn't be more of a ladder, right? You're walking up a few steps, you're walking down a few steps, or rungs, or whatever you want to call them. But then you have the violins doing leaps. The theme becomes a ladder leap. Ya da 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 da. And you get that. And then we have the big loud bit of the theme comes back, and then the coda. The coda is so romantic. Talk about gorgeous orchestration. I have to describe it a little bit in detail. I'm going to play it for you so you'll hear it. But there's a soft timpani roll, which you hear underneath the whole thing. The woodwinds have the theme in places. Little flecks of woodwinds, oboe with bits of flute, just doing little bits of flute. And the harmony. The harmony is what they call in the biz subdominant harmony when the timpani roll comes in. Subdominant harmony. What is the subdominant? Well, there are two basic major key areas that these symphonies inhabit in classical tonality. The tonic, which is your home key, G major, and the dominant, which is the key a fifth above, which is D major in this particular case. The subdominant is the key just below the dominant. So it's what's below D? C, right? No, it's the one below, it's the one below the dominant, which is C. Thank you. It's a C. So if you're in G major, your subdominant will be C major. You can look at it two ways. It's either the key one note below the regular dominant, which is D, or it's the key a fifth below the tonic, which is C. Either way, you're going to get C. Doesn't matter how you do it. I like to think of it as the key a fifth below the tonic because it has a feeling of downness, of relaxation, of withdrawal, of sort of nostalgia, of autumnal glow. And that's what you hear. So I'm going to play you the whole last variation with its loud, eruptive version, then the leaps and ladders version in the middle, and then the sort of repeat of the loud stuff, and then the coda with that long timpani roll over calm subdominant harmony that just feels as though we're saying farewell to the whole wonderful movement. Here it is. this is virtuoso orchestration. It's the use of the orchestra in a wholly wonderful way to paint an incredible, expressive portrait, the atmosphere just is incredible. So that's the slow movement. I mean, what a remarkable symphony this is turning out to be, isn't it? There's a reason it's so popular. Yeah, there is. Okay, now the minuet. The minuet begins with a leaping ladder. Da 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 dum bum ba dum bum ba dum bum bum. It is audibly related to the theme of the slow movement. Dum bum 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 bum. Does the same thing. It's just broken up differently, and the rhythm is different. But essentially, it's the same family of themes. So you hear that. It's a fast minuet. Haydn is now moving towards the scherzo, which is what Beethoven would make of a symphonic movement in quick dance time. He called it a scherzo rather than a minuet. Eventually, when he got to the Eroica Symphony, by then they were scherzos. Haydn had written scherzos. His Opus 333 quartets have a scherzo instead of a minuet. Scherzo means joke, but it's also a quick dance movement. So, we were heading away from the formality and the sort of aristocratic, cast of the minuet. So this is one of those. It's just, it's what it is. It doesn't really relate to a standard minuet at all. And the middle section, the trio section, is also full of leaps and ladders. It really is. I mean, the whole movement is built on that concept. So what I'm going to play you is the second half of the trio, the middle section, leading to the full statement of the minuet part, the A part, without repeats. Because that way you get the entire thematic substance of the movement. You'll hear everything you need to hear, although it's not in the order in which you hear it if you played it exactly from the beginning. I'm just trying to be more efficient in our use of time. So here is the trio section, the second half of the trio section, and the entire minuet. Listen for the leaps, listen for the ladders. Here they are. Also notice the beautiful woodwind scoring. Da 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 da, with the flutes and oboes. And again, that's that pastoral quality that we hear through the entire symphony. All right, now we're into the finale. Now, the first theme of the finale is, it's based on that wonderful closing theme from the first movement exposition. Remember, da 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 yadum badum badum. Well, here that is. I put them together so you can hear them both. There's the first movement tune with a little pause, and then just the opening of the finale. It's just the same thing sped up and played a couple of times over. Here it is. Did you hear the family resemblance? And the finale theme is it's a leap and ladder. Right? Leaps, ladders, ladders and leaps. Leaps up the ladder. Then it goes down the ladder. I mean, it's so different, but on the other hand, so the same. Do you have a feel for that? The way that Haydn creates this music based on similarity of idea, but without having to repeat the actual tune. He makes new tunes, but they're from the same family. And that finale theme is really, really from the same family. And you're going to hear a huge ladder. It's all over this finale. Now, this finale is a sonata rondo. And we've talked about sonata rondos before. Haydn is inventing this as he goes. He really is. And as a result of that, they're all a little bit different for his finales. Rondos are popular in finales because, they go A, B, A, C, A, D, A, however many times you want to do it. And they tend to be sectional, and they're not as dramatic and forward moving as first movements because you keep coming back to the same tune, which is called a ritornello because it keeps returning. There's an episode, then it comes back, then there's an episode, then it comes back. So the form is looser. We used to call, as we say in the music business, it's a looser form because you don't have to integrate everything quite so tightly. You can just relax and have as many contrasting episodes as you want. So what happens in the sonata rondo is that you have the first theme, which we just did, which you know by heart by now, and then there's like motion music going to the second theme as if it were a normal movement in first movement form, and you've got a beautiful second subject, like that, which also has a beautiful accompaniment that's similar to the second subject of the first movement. It goes like that, just so you know. Then, instead of moving on to the development section, the ritornello comes back, and then you have an episode. And then the ritornello comes back, and then you have an episode. So, that's how the thing is going to go, except that one of the episodes is going to be a repeat of the second subject, which we thought would make a sonata exposition. So you get your two for the price of one feeling. You have the episodic enjoyability of the rondo, that breezy lightness of form, while at the same time having the organizational oomph of a sonata movement. So I'm going to play you the entire exposition through that second subject and the return of the ritornello, so you get a sense of how the opening is going to run. Here it is. So we go through a bunch of those sort of things, episodes and returns and episodes and returns. Then there's a coda, of course, because the first movement had a coda, and this movement has a correspondingly interesting coda. And it's marvelous. Oh my. First of all, it contains another timpani surprise. Yes, there is more than one in this symphony and more than one in this movement, for various movements. I told you, Haydn really knew what to do with his timpani. So I just want you to hear how that plays out, and then we'll go straight on to the end of the work. It's just totally, awesomely fabulous. I mean, all these touches of color, they all make the piece so interesting. It sounds like it has an endless kaleidoscopic variety of both melody and harmony and atmosphere and timbre. Just the sound of it is remarkable. And it's one of the main elements that Haydn uses to bind the work together. Just the sound of certain instruments. We hear them and we say, oh, we are in Symphony No. 94. So here is the coda all the way to the end. And that, my friends, is one of the greatest symphonies that the human mind has yet emanated. It's just a gorgeous work, and I know even if it's familiar, I hope that this chat has guided you towards some of the more interesting elements, or things you may not have thought about before. Because the more you listen to this symphony, the more extraordinary it becomes. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me, and take care.